Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new Pori Wrench stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Accidentally Burned Down My Neighbor's Fence and She Tries to Milk Me for $10,000. Judge humbles that ass up real quick. So it's been about 4 years since this happened. I was about 18 at the time, working for a security company. There were constant call-offs and no-shows, have no idea why. But being so young and naive, I was constantly working 16-hour shifts and not coming home until 8 a.m. Also, I lived with my father at the time. The time frame of this was around the 4th of July. I finally had a day off and my best friend was back in town for vacation. We decided to get together and chip in on some good old American fireworks. To be fair, I have had nothing but bad experiences with fireworks, so I had no idea how this would be any different. We got home with the fireworks and we laid them all out on the floor, sparklers, bottle rockets, cakes, and Roman candles. I say, why don't we mess around with some sparklers since it's still not dark yet? Great idea. We go into my backyard, where it hasn't rained in well over 2 months and it is extremely dry. You see the problem here? One of the little sparkies from mine and my friend's sparkler made contact with the ground and made 2 small fires that quickly spread to a large area. I ran as fast as I could to grab the garden hose and quickly started spraying down the fire. It was no use, it was spreading faster than I could spray it. I handed my friend the hose and called 911. What felt like hours was only 4 minutes and the fire was spreading to the neighbor's fence. The neighbor came outside and they were fairly calm to grab their hose and spray down the fence, along with the dead grass in her yard. The fire department shows up finally and I tell my friend, only one of us needs to get in trouble, you should leave. He was reluctant to leave because he felt equally responsible, but I convinced him. I didn't want him to get in trouble and have to drop out of college. My neighbor was super chill about the entire situation at first. I told her that we could talk about replacing the fence and get some quotes to repair it. She was just super grateful that everyone was okay. About 2 hours after the fire, the arson fire investigator came to question me about the fire. I told him the truth. I said I was in the backyard by myself playing with fireworks and accidentally lit the ground on fire. I had gotten off that day without being hit by any charges and was commended for being honest. Here is where it goes downhill very fast. About a week later, I get a knock on the door from the neighbor. I opened the door and she handed me 2 pieces of paper for me to look at. There was a quote for the fence valued at around $4,000 and an estimate for lawn care valued around $6,000. These were really shady and just typed out on a Microsoft Word document, no logo or company name. She then adds, I will also be having you pay my water bill for 3 months because the new yard will need lots of water. Now the fence this woman had before was raggedy and falling apart. Her yard? Dead grass, weeds everywhere, never mowed it. Now looking at this paper, she wants a mahogany fence, and a brand new backyard with flowers and trimmed hedges. I said, I need to get an estimate myself, this doesn't feel right. She says, remember you agreed to replace my fence, and a real man keeps promises. I shut the door and called my dad to tell him about what just happened. He flipped the hell out and told me, son, don't you give that idiot a single dime. He gives me the number to his handyman and tells me to take care of it. The next day I had the guy come out for an estimate, and the neighbor ran outside flailing her arms. I did not give you permission to get an estimate on my fence. Technically it separates the property line, so it's both of our fences. She calls the cops on me for having a contractor, and they ultimately can't do a single thing because I'm on my property. He quickly finishes the estimate off at $1,200. I also knew a guy who did lawn care, from my time working at the grocery store. He estimated the lawn reseeding while she was away from the house to be about $800. After I get these estimates, I give copies to the woman and she is having none of it. I don't know these people, I don't want them near my house, they're probably really shitty contractors. I said, no, I know them personally, they are really nice people and do great work. She shut the door in my face and I went on my way. I ended up working a 16-hour shift that night and got home at 8 a.m, and this woman comes knocking on my door at 9 a.m. and demanded I speak to her. I explained, I would really love to do this, but I just got home and I have to be back at work in less than 5 hours. I need to sleep. She goes, "What kind of lazy butthead sleeps in until 2 p.m.? At this point I had about lost it, and told her, "You can either accept my $2,000 for my quotes or kiss my butt and get nothing." She stood there for a while with her mouth gaped open, but she accepted my offer and planned to meet down at the notary the next morning. I spent that night after I got off work, writing a contract and gathering the $2,000 in cash. The next morning I wake up, and grab this contract to meet down at the notary. I was thrilled to finally be done with this broad, and never speak to her again. I waited for her for over 3 hours and she didn't show up. I get a call from her saying, "I'm sorry, the $2,000 isn't enough. I'm having my guys start work on this project, and you will be paying me full price." Oh really? After that I did not say a single word to her, and I watched for a few months as these guys turned her backyard into an oasis, complete with a small pond, brand new sod and flowers, the whole 9 yards. Come to find out she had plans to remodel these things for a long time, and was just waiting for the opportunity to go through with it. Also in this time, she used her remodel funds to go on a trip to Hawaii. You know how I found out about this? She was bragging about it on the neighborhood Facebook group, and didn't know I was in it. I have a different Facebook name than my real name. Are you ready for the revenge? Now 4 months after the fire and all the remodels, I get served papers to go to court for $10,300. At 18 years old I'm having to hire a lawyer to work my case. When we finally do get into court I lay everything out. The quotes, being harassed multiple times, not showing up after agreeing to a deal, not wanting me to get my own quotes, required by law by the way, and her bragging about screwing me out of money, and I have proof of all of this. The judge looked at her and said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're out of your mind. Not only did this young man tell the truth of what happened, he offered to pay you more than he was supposed to. Your lawn was already dead before the fire occurred, therefore he is only responsible for the fence of $1,200. I will also deduct from this his lawyer fees, $800. So I burned this woman's fence down and all I'm having to give her is $400? Cool." She took a huge financial loss from this, not sure how much the Hawaii trip cost her, but she was in serious debt. She ended up having to sell the house because of it and moved into a smaller house. Haven't heard anything from her since. The next one is titled, "Bullied by Boss and Co-Workers." I was working for this company that offered rebates if you upgraded your house insulation and appliances. The whole "go greener" thing. I was working a year or so. I did my best to get to know everyone. I tried to join the company weekly football group. After winning the poll a few times my picks mistakenly left out. At the Christmas party, my invitation was lost in the mail, but found out anyway. My name was drawn for a prize, an iPad. I was pretty stoked. Then was told I won by mistake. After a while my boss kept telling me that my performance wasn't meeting the requirements for my position. I busted my butt, staying later, coming in early and watching my work closely. It wasn't enough. Every day was getting worse. I was being talked about, given assignments that no one could finish. It was passive-aggressive bullying at its finest. I started having panic attacks on my way to work. I was having nightmares and slowly having a breakdown. My husband kept telling me to quit, but then we wouldn't have insurance for our family. I held on, still no matter how I improved or hard I worked I was being told I wasn't meeting to requirements. I started being yelled at in front of others. Ridiculed relentlessly. I'm a proud person, but even I have a breaking point. I'd run in the bathroom and just cry. Just to leave and start the torment all over again the next day. We had a meeting and they were reorganizing people into new positions and my name was mentioned as one of the few that were moving to a higher position. After the shock I sent my boss an email letting him know how excited I was and that he wouldn't be disappointed. Later that day after I got back from lunch he asked me into his office. He had HR on the phone. For the next 15 minutes I was told how horrible my work was, how my personality wasn't a good fit, yada yada. When I tried to stand up for myself I was shot down. My boss talked over me and before I knew it he was holding a box with my things. I was beside myself. I went home and slept for days. I eventually pulled myself together and moved on. Although it was a really bad experience I decided to go back to school and I got my degree in visual art. I never saw myself as an artist. I had my first art show and to my surprise it was going really well. One piece went for almost $1,000. The buyer wanted to meet me. I instantly knew him when I saw him, it was my old boss. He congratulated me and told me how my piece moved him and blah blah blah. He was so sincere and his wife was also praising me. With my husband standing next to me, I let my former boss know that he wasn't allowed to purchase the piece. He then asked about another and then another and I said no to all of them. He's obviously frustrated. I told him, no, those are for sale, but you personally are not allowed to own any of my art. I do not want anything I create to be anywhere near the likes of you. I then reminded him how horrible he treated me and the mental anguish he caused. His wife was livid with him. As he tried to keep his composure, I walked away while he was still talking me into selling him a piece. I was shaking and couldn't believe I just did that. I really could have used the money, but I think I made the right decision. The next one is titled, Cut My Resources Then Put Pressure on Me to Complete a Project a Month Ahead of Schedule? Hi, so firstly a bit of background. I work as part of an evil empire, multinational corporate, and am the lead continuous development and change analyst in charge of a medium-sized project. So at the beginning of December I completed my initial review for a major part of what is to be delivered and advised that it would take until end of January with my current operational resource to complete some of the required actions from the back of it. I also highlighted that I should be given additional 2 full-time people to get it completed before January. Did I get people? Nope. Did they take a person away from me because they didn't seem to be doing that much? Yep. Bear in mind this was being done by 2 people not in my reporting chain and above me on the food chain, so I couldn't scream blue murder about it. Last Monday, 19th, they pulled me into a meeting and basically gave me a bollocking because you are putting blockers in place which affect our year-end figures. They actually mean their incentives by this and realized it would affect them when trying to work out how much they would get, and I needed to get things done by the end of the month. Right. Duck, you guys, you want to see what that guy was doing? You think you are my boss? My boss was ducking livid and she is cold decking each of their enhancement requests as soon as she is back in office. By the end of day Tuesday I advised that I would have a full plan for acceleration of the project ready for review and sign off. But they would need to be available for a meeting on Friday 23, today, last working day before Christmas, when they were both planning to slope off early for a few drinks. They didn't really like it, but they could hardly refuse as I was giving them what they wanted. Do you think it's all over? I booked the meeting time for 12. Aren't I nice, going to let them work through lunch and still get to the pub? If you have heard the phrase, death by PowerPoint, then you might think you know what is about to happen. 46 slides with example investigations into issues found in minute and boring detail. A line-by-line review of a 12-page document. At 16:30, with only a 15-minute break, they had had no lunch. They had glazed eyes. They agreed to the process outline. Do you think it's over now? I then offered to go through the addendums, or if they wished they could take them home and review them, but if I could get an answer before 10 p.m. today, as I wanted to turn my phone off for the Christmas period and I'd need to get the ball rolling first thing Wednesday. This was the riskiest part of my plan. They gratefully said they would study the addendums at home as they knew it was getting late. I got the messages from both of them within a few minutes of 9:50, all approved. Let's take a vote? Do you think they read them? I know they didn't. The addendums promised me 18 full-time operation staff over the next week, and given the holiday period the department will fail to meet other BAU targets, which has a direct impact on their incentive. I've forwarded the sign-offs with the documents attached to my boss, who is going to raise a concern that this level of manpower was agreed without referring to their boss, on Wednesday. She is also going to raise a concern about the tone of meetings they have had with me and the behavior they have displayed. Now it's over. The next one is titled, Don't Lie to Your Girlfriend or She'll Lay Down the Law. So, this is actually something that happened to my best friend's mum, and I heard most of it secondhand, so forgive me for any missing details. So, best friend's mum, who I will now refer to as Mama for the rest of the story, has dated quite a few men and had kids with at least 3 of them. She was currently in a relationship with a man for about a year and a half after leaving a physically abusive one not too long before that. Now I met the guy fairly recently and he gave off a generally good impression. Worked for a certain Red Bullseye store, and sometimes all of us would play cards in the middle of night for fun. he helped take care of the kids and mama seemed happy enough, so I thought nothing of it. I'm sleeping over one day, wake up to and my best friend is telling all her younger siblings to go into their rooms and to stay there. Curious, I asked what was going on and she tells me that her mother called the cops to come over. Now, you can imagine I was a little confused about the situation, so I pried a bit more and she tells me the whole situation. Apparently, when they first started dating he told her he was a former Marine and police officer. He had a badge and 2 handguns. Turns out he lied about that and the firearms he had were illegally possessed. Mama found out he was texting and seeing girls during longer shifts. He said he had an apartment, but Mama talked to his ex-wife and he never had his own apartment. On top of all the lying, he also stole money from them. My friend would give him money for the cable bill. They found out he wasn't paying that and the other utilities when they got a call giving them notice that their electricity was being shut off in a week. So, that day after gathering the evidence, he left for work and called the police to seize the weapons and pick him up to arrest him. While cleaning out his stuff they found that things that had gone missing were being hoarded in his closet. Controllers, movies, wallets, receipts, broken headphones, etc. All in all, it was like an episode of Storage Wars and Mama got her sweet, sweet revenge, considering illegal possession of weapons in New York City and impersonating a cop, on top of a prior arrest, will probably get him a decent amount of jail time. And on a personal plus side, I owed him $30 for losing a card game, so it was a pretty good day for all us. The last one is titled, Cheaters Go to Jail. Little background before I start. My mum had met my stepdad when I was 9 years old and at the time of this story, I was 25. They'd been living together pretty much the whole time and during this story I was living at home, although I worked at sea so was barely there. This person was, for all intents and purposes, my dad. As a background note that was relevant to this story, he had been caught previously texting another woman who was my mum's workmate and had been caught ringing sex lines, weird, and blamed it on a 13-year-old me. They split up when he was caught texting for a while, and when they got back together I did have words with him, but other than that I stay out of their business. Shortly after returning home from sea I noticed some tension between my parents. Something wasn't right, but it wasn't any of my business and I did my best to keep myself from being a spark that blew up any arguments. It was icy. Anyway, one morning crap hit the fan. It was crazy and I stayed way out of it while they had a shouting match and then disappeared to work. This was a big one and they'd called it quits. I was home when my dad came home to pick up his stuff and he moved out to his sister's. He was pretty pleasant, said goodbye, and I've only seen him once since. Slowly, I learned the truth and put things together myself. My good old stepdad was cheating. Not only was he cheating, but she was pregnant and she had a husband. It was a clusterfuck. His sister had covered it, friends had covered it, and they let my mother babysit while they went on nights out by disguising them as work nights. I've always been able to kick his butt, but now I wanted to and he knew it. He stayed the hell away. The one time I did see him since I vowed to destroy everything he cared for, it was cheesy but I felt badass. Revenge. This was a multi-pronged attack. I was going nuclear with this crap and I had the time to do it. Step 1 was to take out the sister. I hated that witch anyway, so this was going to be a pleasure. Ever since giving birth to her demon hell spawn of a child, she had been out of work but recently set up her own business using the inheritance from her parents. Inheritance she didn't declare while claiming benefits, and how my dad helped her by using his bank account as her safe haven. A quick call to the Department of Work and Pensions and she was done. I had so much evidence. She was caught and audited, then sentenced to committing fraud and made to wear an ankle monitor. No more secret nights out, witch, enjoy paying it back. Edit, I have no idea why she got an ankle monitor, but it was about $15,000 in fraudulent money. I then got in touch with the local paper to let them know of the link between this petty criminal and her brand new store. One full page later and her stupid face was everywhere because she had been in an editorial when she first opened it about how hard a working mother she was. Facebook went nuts and I relaxed for a little. I wanted to see how far the damage spread before I moved on to phase 2. Step 2 turned out to be a juicy finale. Stepdad has been a low-key piece of crap for years. He regularly allowed people to steal from his job for years in exchange for backhanders until he got greedy and it was time to nail his balls to the wall. Recently in our house we had a living room renovation which cost thousands, some of that juicy inheritance money, thanks Dad, and part of that was a log-burning stove. This turned out to be stolen from his workplace. I couldn't prove his guilt for his thefts until he left behind a huge ducking metal piece of evidence in the living room. Show time. I called his company and asked them about problems with the stove and that my dad had acquired it using his staff discount, but we weren't in contact anymore. He asked for the serial number which I provided, and oh no, it was stolen. I'm shocked and appalled, sir. If it is the case, I'd be more than happy to pay for this, but we thought it had been bought. This is where the nuclear bomb hit. Police were called, more crimes were discovered, he was arrested and sacked. Turns out he'd stolen copper wiring from one of their buildings, he'd stolen more than one stove and had regularly been caught taking bribes on camera. Game over, butthead. The conclusion. He and his sister are the only family left, they only have each other, and I managed to give them both a criminal record. Her business is somehow still going, but I'm working on that, and he lost his job with a child on the way and 2 new stepchildren. He had to sell his beloved car and had been shunned by large portions of the community. He's still due in court, so hopefully a nice New Year present is in order, but I'm led to believe it's all but guaranteed a jail sentence. She doesn't have the tag anymore, but that store is next on the list. On the other hand, my mum is fine about the karma that she doesn't know I had anything to do with. He's been helping with mortgage payments for 16 years while gaining nothing back. He paid for renovations to the house she lives in, and she has his TV on the wall and the car he bought her on the drive. This Christmas I'll be home from sea and we shall enjoy not having them round. Oh, and his girlfriend got hit by a car. Thanks for listening.